Call this August 11th, 2026, Essex County Board of Supervisors work session to order. April, you do a roll call, please.
Chairman Akers.
Present.
Vice Chairman Gill.
Present.
Supervisor Hale.
Present.
Supervisor Henry.
Here.
Supervisor Magruder.
Present.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Don't see Davenport and Associates here as of yet. They were first on our agenda. So with that, we'll move on and then do the financial update here shortly after when they get here. We're going to start with the subdivision plat case, but Supervisor Magruder has a conflict with this, so he's going to recuse himself from this discussion.
I have a personal interest in case number 202-601-84 as one of the owners of the county tax map parcel 60-86A and as a member of Woodland Partnership, which has a mailing address of 247 Bruce Road, Tappahannock, Virginia. Therefore, I am disqualifying myself from participating in this matter.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
All right, Brian, let you.
Okay,
Give us
did you
a
want to
briefing.
talk about the subdivision case first, or the conditional use permit?
Yeah, let's go in order. So the plat is the first one, I think, on our agenda, correct? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I kicked John out for nothing, but yes, since we kicked John out, we'll go to, we'll do the conditional use permit.
Okay. Did my computer just do that?
Yeah, I jumped ahead one.
All right, I will get out of this, and I'll go open that conditional use permit up then.
And board members, as he's pulling that up, it's going to be my recommendation to you all that even though we have these for action on our regular meeting, it's going to be my recommendation that we do not take action on these since we just received this information on Friday to give us more time to review, take the comments that we'll hear here tonight on it. We can postpone that to a later date if it's to the board's liking. We can postpone it until next month's meeting or sometime thereof. So.
Okay, so this case is a request for a conditional use permit on an A2 zone parcel. This conditional use permit would only cover around 7.46 acres of the total 80.86 acres of the parcel. It is zoned A2 countryside in the South Magisterial District. It's as far south in the county as you can go before you go into Middlesex County on 17. Basically, in a nutshell, the old zoning ordinance prior to your 2022 zoning ordinance was a lot more liberal with regard to forestry activities. You can see permitted uses on there like sawmills and things like that. While this request is not a sawmill per se, what this request is what I would call an aggregation yard, a buying station, if you will, for logs, where somebody can purchase logs, bring logs into the site, grade them, load them onto containers, and the idea in this particular case is to export the logs. Staff interpreted the new zoning ordinance to no longer allow such a thing by right, that it'd be a conditional use permit. And you can see that in your memo. I included the Planning Commission memo where I detailed, and that's right there. This is from the use matrix from your zoning ordinance, sawmill commercial. In zoning, you know, it's impossible to list every possible use somebody wants to do with the property. So you try to find things that are close enough approximation to fit that box. And as you can see there, it's their by right use is an industrial, but not in A1 or A2. So with that said, we proceeded with a conditional use permit process. And as you can see here, this is my guidance to the Planning Commission. You need to look at the location, the character, and extent of any consideration to see if it's appropriate in recommending to the Board of Supervisors. At the public hearing, there was quite a bit of opposition. Most of the opposition, and you'll probably hear some more tonight, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but as a staff person, I interpreted the opposition to center mostly around road access and the ability of that road to withstand the truck traffic. And that's something we hear commonly no matter what the request is. The Planning Commission, as you can see in your memo, did recommend to deny this request. And it comes to you with that recommendation from the planning commission. I was trying to find the map of the area. Sideways, and it's not a PowerPoint, so I can't turn it around for you, but that's a log aggregation yard, the type of equipment to be used. The logs are simply pushed into the trailer. A debarker might be used in some cases, according to the applicants, and that is the area there. You can see Montague Road, and that's the 7.46 acre parcel. I will say, as your staff person, it is unfortunate that in denial, the planning commission, and I think I see the error tonight of that. I think next time, before the planning commission gets to that phase, we'll say, if you want a motion to deny, that's fine, but if you would, please also take a recommended suite of conditions. You are allowed as a board to assess your own conditions. It's not like a proffer. You don't have to wait. It's not a receptive thing. You can assess conditions upon approval. Conditions could include things to do with the entrance, time of use, volumes, things like that. They just have to be tied directly to the use itself and can't really involve cash money or anything like that. So with the denial tonight, recommendation from the planning commission, I don't have a suite of conditions to show you that the planning commission says, oh, by the way, if you do approve it, use these conditions. So, any questions?
Brian, could you provide us, and it doesn't have to be now, I was trying to pull it up here and I couldn't, the actual use matrix itself that allows, what's allowed by right versus conditional use?
Oh,
I know
okay.
you've got that little section. I always like to compare it to what other uses are by right versus conditional use.
Yeah, so that's gonna be, I've got the paper copy over there, and I can give you a quick rundown on that.
I pulled up a quick one here. I'm just thinking that, it's always good to kind of see those side by side, to look at them, to see what other things are available by right versus conditional versus, that's not permitted. Similar to what we did with, the Tappahannock Chevrolet folks, looking to see that.
By right and A2, sportsman club, private, stable, commercial, so that would be a horse stable. There's no size limit on that. It could be a huge horse stable, private. Wayside stand, that's a roadside stand. Group home, of course, single-family dwellings, they're permitted in almost all districts. Cemetery, public park and recreation area. Religious assembly, so a church is by right, does not require
Is there any,
special
like, similar, because like you said, we can't capture everything under the sun. Is there anything, and I know this was the applicant had under there, like sawmill, conditional use. Is there any other uses that are by right or similar to that?
There is a utility service minor that's on here, and that is a facility that would be basically, and you don't see many of them anymore, but the Verizon buildings that are about the size of this room here that are packed with wiring and circuitry, those are by right up to a certain point.
I know when I read through the minutes, there was a lot of concern about traffic and road conditions, and so I'm thinking more of things that would generate that more type of activity than the actual use of it. So-
Farmer's market is by right. A farmer's market could probably generate as much car and pickup truck traffic
But not
as
heavy
something
trucks.
like this.
But not heavy trucks.
But probably not a whole lot of heavy trucks unless it was wildly successful. Yeah, it's most of your A2 uses that are by right are gonna be a little bit less use than this. And I think that's probably why with your 2022 ordinance change, it slid from being by right into more of a conditional kind of special permit realm.
Board members, do you have any other questions for Brian regarding this?
I have just a couple.
Ronnie?
Are you aware of any other uses similar to this in other counties?
I mean, anecdotally, yes. I don't know of any that have been approved recently. But as you know, when you drive down the 17 corridor, there are numerous sawmills and places that buy logs along the way, various types of industries.
But not an export type
Not an
loading,
export type.
The
only one that
debulking system.
Correct. The only one that I'm aware of is over near Eltham. There is a log exporter over there. I cannot recall the name of the person, but if you're leaving West Point, car dealerships on your left, keep going. There's that little Eltham Industrial Park to the right. Almost the next driveway you hit, you'll see a big oak tree by there. That guy buys a lot of specialty hardwoods for export.
Right.
He specializes in that.
So I think you answered my question. That property is probably zoned in industrial use.
It's adjacent to industrial property, and there's more industrial property beyond it. I think it's probably a safe speculation.
Right. And then the legalities of what you can do with a facility that exports. I've seen things about the debulking regulations and that sort of thing. Did you examine those areas?
We did, and we discussed that actually with Mr. Ali, the gentleman who wishes to undertake this work. He explained, and I did some research on it and found he was largely true. Some countries do not prohibit the bark being intact. Of course, most insects are going to be within the bark, especially, he specializes in pine. So a pine tree going to Indonesia, for instance, probably does not have to have the bark removed. China wants the bark removed. They're also generally, most countries are going to insert methyl bromide or some kind of chemical into the trailer before they even open it for a week or two to try to fumigate it.
Do they fumigate it there, or they go somewhere else?
Oh, yeah.
So that's
There is-
another use, a pesticide use.
We
that
don't
would
care
go
if we export our bugs, I guess, but I
Right.
think most countries don't want to import them. I know that we do not allow lumber to come in unless it's been
Right.
fumigated at all. So the debarking is going to vary, I think, depending on his market. And I think that's the hard thing that the Planning Commission was to nail down. The debarking is very noisy. The debarking seems to create probably more noise than almost anything. You can get rid of the beepers on your backup alarms and things like that and probably keep a place pretty quiet other than the trucks coming in and out. But the debarking, there's no way around it. That's exceeding 100 decibels.
And my last question, were
No,
you
go
making a
ahead.
point? Okay. And I know Montague Road is, and I've been down that road, and we talked to VDOT from time to time. I guess there's no plans to do any sort of improvement to that road.
As you know, we're in constant contact with VDOT. I had a conversation with VDOT last week about this exact road, and just kind of the offhand question. They don't want to be held to this, but I said, hey, is Montague on the short list or a long list for possible, upgrading, if you will, a wider road deck, better ditch system, et cetera. And they said, really, we can't say that. There's just no way that that's going to happen anytime in the foreseeable future.
Okay. Thank you.
And along with that, I think I read it correctly, was it 150, expected like 150 vehicles per month?
Right, yeah, on that stretch, more or less. It seems to be mostly the residents that live in that area or occasional logging operations and things like that. That's the tough part about this. I think everybody can agree we need more markets for logs. More markets mean hopefully higher prices for local landowners. It's just a challenge to get over the road condition in this area.
What is that property at 6086?
6086.
Is that a house? There's a lot of buildings there,
Yep,
so I was just.
yep. And that property owner will probably, I spoke to her earlier, she said she would probably be here.
This the one with the horses, correct?
The horse farm. Yeah.
This the horse farm, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they
Okay.
have some horses. Yep. Or at least that's what.
I just one question. The 7.46 acres that comes out as a flag division there. What's the road frontage on Montague Road on a 7.46 acres?
It's gonna be a 100-foot requirement, so that, and I see what you're saying with that. I think that geometry, if it were approved, would probably have to be tweaked slightly. You are allowed to have just your road frontage be a 50-foot wide right-of-way, as long as once you get past the back of the 86 parcel, you have the width there. You're gonna need at least 100, 150 feet, which I think it has. I think it's about 300 feet deep there, so we are allowed to allow you to have as little as 50 feet, as long as once you get that private road in, you have the depth that you need.
Board members, any other questions for Brian?
Ronnie stole my question.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I do, though.
all right, I'll bring up the other one real quick. I know you guys have a lot to do, so.
Well, we have a public hearing. Do we have one of the owners here? You'll have an opportunity when we do our public hearing. We'll bring you up to answer any questions or make any comments or anything, so don't. Well, when we do our public hearing, that's the time we'll let everybody speak. This is just a briefing. Typically, we would have these maybe the month before and then bring, so this is kind of, we're kind of shoving it all together. So when we go into our regular meeting, you have an opportunity to speak to that. All right, should we bring John back in if we're going on the
Yeah,
others?
yeah.
You want me to grab it? Oh, you got it.
While we're waiting for him, I do have a handout on this. I'll just start on this one to save time. This request is a preliminary subdivision plat approval for a group called Vision Builders. This is a parcel that's located off of Scotts Mill Road near Deshay Road. This is near the part of Deshay where it becomes gravel. It crosses Scotts Mill and becomes gravel on the other side. A lot of people don't realize, but that continues to be called Deshay Road. But this is another thing with your new ordinance, or your new, air quotes, new ordinance, where you have a process where somebody doesn't have to necessarily do final plat approval on a subdivision request, major subdivision request. They can do a preliminary plat approval. And so that's what this, I've never done one of these before here, so that's what this is about. This gives the, as you see here, I just made a note. If it's a subdivision request of 50 lots or more, this process is mandatory. 50 lots or less, this process is voluntary. So consultations with the engineer, Racy Engineering, for the owner last winter, when we first started talking about this, we encouraged them to try to go the preliminary plat route, because what this does is it prevents you from having to spend all the money to develop final road plats, profiles, all those things. You can end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on engineering, and then if you do not get approved, you have nothing to show for your efforts. This is still very expensive, but this is basically a preliminary plat approval. If somebody got approved with a preliminary plat, they have a certain time frame within which they have to come back to you all with the final plat. And also, preliminary plat approval is no guarantee of final plat approval. It does give you a general nod, but it's not final. This was held in public hearing on May 12th by the Planning Commission. Following that meeting, you'll see, and what I'll show you in a second, there were some issues with roads. And we've dealt with this with the rezoning recently. Multiple connections in multiple directions. VDOT wants to have roads that go somewhere, or they connect to the next neighborhood over, or something like that, for obvious reasons, for storms like we had last night, for national disasters, things like that. And just for the taxpayer money that's spent on a road, if it just ends in a cul-de-sac, that's not quite equitable. So at the May 12th meeting, the Planning Commission tabled this request and asked staff to arrange a meeting with VDOT, the engineer for the owner, and discuss the issue. We did that following this meeting, and I'll show you that effort in a second. And basically what resulted was a modified plat. So they amended their preliminary plat, and that's here, that's right behind your memo set. The main meat and potatoes of that is, and I don't know if you can see when I put my cursor. Yeah. That stub out right there is what resulted from consultation with VDOT. VDOT worked with Racy Engineering, of course we were all on Zoom, to say, hey, sometimes secondary roads are accepted with a stub out to quote-unquote future development. The future development may not be there yet, it may never transpire, but having the stub out at least gets you to where you may be accepted into the VDOT system of roadways. Because as you all know, and we've talked about this recently, for your one of your requirements in Essex County for a major subdivision is that the road has to be adopted by VDOT. And it's kind of a catch-22, a chicken and the egg kind of thing. If a proposal has no chance of ever being adopted as a state road, it's really dead on arrival. If it at least has some of the components that VDOT wants to see, it may work. Placing this stub out here allows it to eventually flow over to the gravel side of Deshay so that you could make a loop, but at this time, this proposal does not make a loop. It goes in and it comes out. That's an area where fire trucks, emergency vehicles can turn around or stage up if there is a fire in this neighborhood, things like that. So it's helpful. It's great. The skin in the game for the developer is that they actually had a development parcel here. You can see on the older plats that are in your file. That is gone. So your lot serve has dropped by one lot with this. So it was not without penalty, but it's not quite to where it would probably be a immediate VDOT adoption. Although when you get into the process with VDOT, they're very they play their cards close to the chest. So this is the main entrance here. You can see coming off of Scotts Mill Road. And that'll come up in a second based on the letter you just received from an adjacent property owner, which I can quickly address. At the Planning Commission took this back up at their June meeting, further deliberations and discussions with the engineer. At that time, they did recommend forwarding this on to you all with the recommendation of approval. That vote was 5-1. It was not a unanimous vote. There was one planning commissioner who disagreed. That said, there were several adjacent property owners in this area, both down gravel side of Deshay and along Scotts Mill, who spoke against this. I do not recall an adjacent property owner speaking in favor of it. Many of the concerns were regarding the entrance here. What is this entrance going to look like? There's a feeling that it was already somewhat of a hidden entrance coming through, and I have a couple pictures I'll show you in a second that are taken from standing in that area. It's a 55 speed limit there. Your sight distance is around 300 to 400 feet, but going 55 miles an hour, you cover that in a couple seconds. I have a feeling that means that this geometry you see here at the road intersection is going to have to be widened out if that was ever built. You can see the property owners listed here, Roger Massey. That is the property owner that just sent you the protest letter. He was sent the adjacent property owner letter, and in doing this for 18 years, I can tell you that's the #1 complaint. I'm sure Max knows that as well. That's the #1 complaint you hear. Is it true? Is it not? There's no way. I'm not the world's biggest fan of the U.S. mail. They're not super fast. I remember many years ago, we used to send adjacent property owner letters out, and sometimes 2 days later, somebody in West Virginia who you sent the letter to would call you, hey, what's this letter about? It's like, wow, in 2 days. That never happens now. The statutory requirements for adjacent property owner notice haven't really increased to account for that. That said, you can see the dates in our affidavits. We send them out as far in advance as we possibly can. As soon as we know something is going to be advertised and is on an agenda, we immediately send those letters. Don't go to lunch, don't do anything, sit down, grind them out, and they go out. Does that mean that they all make it to where they're supposed to go? No. Does that mean that it's a bad hearing? Probably not. Adjacent property owner acknowledgement is just there to make sure that you guys hear from people who might be affected by something and gather as much information and input as you can. It doesn't really create a fatal flaw in most cases unless it's like a dynamite factory or something that somebody wants to build. Mr. Massey, and this is key, he owns the land that's under this right-of-way. So the applicant here, and I'll try to get my cursor going again. The applicant here, Vision Builders, owns to here, where this corner is. They do have a private 50-foot right-of-way, which is enough to get your foot in the door to begin this process. However, that 50-foot right-of-way will have to be converted to public because, as you know, VDOT, when they accept a road into their system, they're going to want it to be fee simple. So they will actually then own this land. If Mr. Massey and his family still own this land at this time, that's probably going to create a problem. You guys have two choices. One, well, you have several choices, but if you did want to approve this item, you could approve it knowing that the applicant then has an uphill battle in several fronts. One is septic, road profiles, VDOT accepting certain things, but also getting Mr. Massey to agree to a fee simple right-of-way granting, because at that point, he won't actually own this real estate under here, the Commonwealth of Virginia will. Whether that can happen or not, I don't know. You could deny it based on that because it does create an issue. I don't really know what to advise you because I have not seen this happen before. Generally, somebody who's going to propose a major subdivision request is going to generally abut enough of an existing Virginia State Highway that they don't have this issue. A landlocked parcel for major subdivision is always an uphill battle, and this is exactly why. You'd also have to eventually get fee simple right away there to go through, there again, same property owner, to get back to Deshay to make your curve and make your turn back. They're just a closer. We can all agree that affordable housing is important. I think that's why this project was supported. It's laid out well. You can say a lot of good things about it. I do have to point out the flaw with the right of way. I do know the engineer has indicated to me that is something that they are working on. Go away. This is just your GIS profile. You can see my green highlight around there. The subject parcel there, 15A, and the green takes you right along those parcel lines back out to Scotts Mill Road. There's the picture of the intersection right here. I'm standing in gravel, I'll call it gravel Deshay. I'm facing just behind that blue sign is where this subdivision road would daylight.
So
That
Brian,
is,
just a quick question real quick. So is this right-of-way dead in the center of the adjoining neighbor's property?
yes, yeah, and I'll flip back to that.
I just couldn't tell if that was all.
Yeah, it's right. I don't want to make this thing move. Let me put my cursor. I'm going to follow Massey property right there, this right of way.
So that 3516 is all one property?
Yep, 3515, and right here, 30-55 is also his. 3516 is a different property owner.
I'm sorry, what does that say, 3515?
Yeah, my highlight kind of covered 15.
So
but
the
yeah,
right-of-way is going through one owner?
going through one owner, Massey. Yep,
And what's 3055? Is that part of the same owner?
that is also Massey. Yep.
So, saying 3515 Alpha is subdivision, correct?
3515A, it would be the subdivision parcel, correct. Yeah, and I'll put my cursor back over here, you see that area here? That is not only landlocked back here, that area of the parcel is separated by this stream here, so they do not propose to do anything with this parcel at all. It would just be timber and woods and everything that it is now. So all of the proposed development would occur kind of where I'm moving my cursor right here. So out of 40 acres, they've clustered that 15 lot serve right into this one area.
And what about 3518 and 3516? Is that,
Those are adjacent property owners as well, who are not Massey. That's not Massey property. That's,
and did we get any, was there any feedback from those property owners? Jeff?
yes, on at least one of them, I remember seeing them here and talking to them, yep.
Do you know how long ago that right-of-way was given? Was it given with? It seems odd to cut it through the middle of a property and not a boundary line of.
Correct. So I talked to Mr. Massey, as he indicates in his letter, somebody from the zoning office, that was me. Luckily, he said I was very nice. I told Kelly that. I said, well, at least he said I was very polite and nice. I came out and spoke with him after the meeting just to find out what was going on, what happened with the letter. His nephew was there. He said, well, my nephew pays the taxes. He got the letter. So I think there was communication within, so the letter did get where it was supposed to go. It just didn't get to the right person who had a problem with the proposal. I asked him, I said, okay, so you sold the applicant this land? And he said, yes, I did. And I said, okay, well, I understand your seller's regret or whatever they call it back in the day. So I think that's part of it. When that occurred, I do not know, whether that was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm not sure how long ago that was. And, you know, that's kind of regrettable.
But at that point, you know, the owner of Massey's who sold that property gave that right-of-way through the center of that property?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So it's a deeded right-of-way, not prescription right-of-way. right?
correct. It is a deeded right-of-way.
It's a deed
Yep.
right away,
Yeah, it's a 50-foot deeded right-of-way, so,
so.
but if you read the language of the deed, and I don't have it available for you, it's private. So it's only for private, so the regret for him is that, yes, he gave the right-of-way. The saving grace for him, I'm sure he's not aware yet, but the fact that it's private means that these two people still need to work together if this is gonna happen for this individual. Now, the next question you haven't asked yet, but I'll go ahead and answer it, is if this proposal were denied, what options does Vision Builders have? Well, they have a 50-foot private right-of-way. 15A, depending on when that was parcelized, say just for argument's sake, it was done before 1988, they may be able to come back to us with a 5-lot minor subdivision and still utilize that private right-of-way. So there are things that they can do, whether that's gonna be economically feasible for them or pay for what they paid for the land, I don't know. Thankfully, that's not part of my matrix of decisions that I go through, but it might be available for a minor subdivision. There's plenty of land there for 5 lots, especially given the land use that it is, but that's depends on when it was parcelized.
Chairman Akers, it looks like according to the GIS that property was sold to Vision Builders on the 24th of January in 2007. So,
Thank you.
you're very welcome.
Yeah, I just, it was
Essex
just,
County, they're right, they got their stuff.
Yeah.
Was did the deed specify the right-of-way width?
Yeah, 50 foot, yep.
It is specified 50
That's a
foot.
state, that's a state.
So that's a pretty modern, as you guys know, many that we have are as little as 12 foot, 20 foot.
It's modern.
50 foot sounds very wide, but by the time you run broadband on one side, maybe some plumbing on the other, and a road, you chew it up pretty quickly.
What does VDOT require for them to put the road in there?
VDOT requires a minimum of 50 foot. They're ideally, you can see there's the VDOT comments. For a small 15-lot subdivision like this, 50 feet will work. In a perfect world, 75 would be better, just because of your drainage, your runoff, things like that.
But if I understood you, the 50 foot has to be fee simple.
It's gonna, yeah, by the time, And you guys know you would be involved at that point because the Board of Supervisors has to be a part of the conveyance to VDOT. It does really need to be feasible. That's that goes to the notes I just gave you here, which come from one of our zoning, kind of a textbook, if you will. 24-250 current requirements for accepting secondary roads. That kind of just gives you the quick elevator kind of how it's done now. If you want, I can send you the link to that 2018 guidance on secondary street acceptance. But the process does involve you all, and that would even be after final subdivision plat approval. After that, you'd have another process to adopt this road into the system. And VDOT really needs to own it because they don't need to, they need to be able to maintain it, they need to modify it if they want to, that it needs to be simple. And someday, if it ever became an urban area where those roads were then controlled by a city or a town, the city or the town's gonna be doing that work, and they might have a public works, and it'll be conveyed to them, so.
It's gravel now, correct?
The
right-of-way?
50-foot right-of-way,
Grass, dirt.
it's grass and dirt, yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
gar-
it-
grown up.
I like going in the woods, I'm not afraid of snakes, and I didn't even go back in there. just to tell
So
you
if
how it
VDOT
is.
takes it over, are they gonna make it asphalt or gonna leave it
Well,
gravel like they do rest of
Yeah,
the stuff?
so if this were approved, the contractor has to basically get this road up to VDOT standards prior to you all even doing the gavel work to send it to VDOT. Yeah, it's all, the subdivision agent, the subdivider, the developer has to pay for the road to be built completely to VDOT specs. You actually have one road right now in this county where that has happened, where it's still outstanding, where the contractor still hasn't gotten the road and the subdivider still hasn't gotten the road up to standards, so. And you've got a bond on that, you'll hold that bond. Bonds are $50,000 to $200,000 that you'll hold until they're done.
Brian, for this zoning in here, because we've had several requests to put in houses and different developments that require 2 entrances. Does this zoning in here require 2 entrances? We've got a stub road, but that's not 2 entrances. So
Right.
does our zoning require 2 entrances?
Your zoning, the language of your zoning ordinance specifically regarding subdivisions for major subdivisions does require that it meet VDOT specifications. When you refer back to VDOT specifications, and you can see it there, it does require either 2 entrances or a connection, and multiple connections in multiple directions is kind of VDOT's watch phrase, if you will, on that. So
This subdivision does not meet that requirement, is what you're saying?
with the stub road, it might, but it's not a final. It's not a
Okay.
final. The stub road is based on VDOT's comments to try to get it close to where it needs to be, that they will accept a stub out for future development in lieu of a multiple connection.
That's the way I read VDOT's comment. It could be either or.
Yeah,
Okay. With that being said, and
but it's
based-
not, but as I said, VDOT always holds their cards close to the chest. They say, well, this may be approved.
And based on the recent letter that we received from that landowner that owns the land that this this right-of-way goes across, deeded right-of-way, hypothetically speaking, if that landowner will not grant this builder fee simple transfer of that 50-foot of land, then does eminent domain play into this in any way, shape, or
That was
form?
my question too.
From the state or from local?
Thank you, Max.
My man, go for it, buddy.
I would say, before you get to that analysis, in order
This is
for,
hypothetically.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally hypothetical.
that is a decision driven and controlled by this board at the local level.
Okay.
But before that, VDOT would not be exercising eminent domain for a subdivision road unless they owned some sort of interest in that area or was necessary for an expansion project somewhere else. But in order for the subdivision plat to be approved, the final recordable plat, all of the property owners need to sign that plat dedicating the
Right.
appropriate
Right.
right-of-way. So there's gonna have to be, as Brian said, some agreement somewhere down the line, because that's gotta be noted on the final subdivision plat.
Another follow-up, if by some miracle and chance that landowner agrees and it's accepted by VDOT and all, is there a county zoning requirement that this road has to be a certain distance from, especially 3516, or not 3516, 3555A?
That's more of a VDOT planning thing, ideally, and that's just like what we dealt with the road diet out here. VDOT,
3516, I mean.
yeah, VDOT doesn't want to see
I mean,
a lot of, driveway, it becomes dangerous. You definitely don't want an entrance there right next to somebody's driveway. In a perfect world, you would try to get, but you don't want to be near the Deshay Road intersection either. So there's no ordinance requirement to be a certain distance off of somebody else's driveway.
Okay.
But that falls more in the VDOT planning world, and
Okay, so the other
I
part
can't
to
speak to
that is, is that deeded right away saying the existing road and 50 feet wide? Or is it just say it's a prescriptive, meaning that it can be anywhere on 35, whatever that property is?
Is it drawn out by the plat,
15.
the right of way?
yeah, what the plat that the engineer has shown is following right along in that.
That's the existing
Yep.
road, I understand that, but is that what the deed says? We're giving you permission to use the existing right-of-way or
That's-
existing road?
Yeah, that's
Or
where,
is it just saying you have the right to build 50 feet to it?
Did the 2007 deed cite this right of way location?
Yeah,
that's a good question. I don't have that information.
There's a lot of
in front me.
questions here.
sorry about that. We deal a lot with this in forestry, so that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking these questions. It's, because it is important,
Mhm.
because if they can move that road,
Yeah.
I'm just feeling for that person right there. You're gonna have
Yeah,
two
right here.
driveways very close together if that's the case.
Yeah,
But the other thing, and this is a VDOT question too, but with a major subdivision, with cars coming in and out of there on a 50-foot
Mm-hmm.
road, wouldn't you, and a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, wouldn't you need a turn-in lane?
yes. I think you probably will.
It's not drawn in here that I saw.
Yeah. No.
Good point.
But again, a lot of this is preliminary, just to get that part started, and that preliminary, is that good for 5 years if approved, is that what it is?
Yes, yeah. And they have to be diligently working towards approval, or else it dies.
So 5 years, whatever that date
Yeah,
is.
then
it
it's over.
dies.
Yeah, which is it's a good, I don't have a problem with that system. I think it's a good way to do it if you're gonna have a subdivision ordinance. But, you're right, we're running into, and the planning commissioners have pulled me aside and said this recently, we've run into several proposals lately that have this fatal flaw where they just don't connect. They're just not set upon the land well. And, I've been saying this a bunch in the office lately, not every complete application is a good application. So, something can be complete, but maybe it could have been better. If you're going to submit something, I would have had that 2007 deed on here. Go ahead and show a board or a commission the genesis of everything that you're proposing so that people understand. Staff, my job is not to defend their proposal for them or any proposal really. But it becomes difficult for all of us to make a good decision and flow things through when we don't have the whole story.
And how much change can happen between a preliminary and a final? Is it kind of just,
Quite a bit, yeah. Things like that turning lane or decel lane or an acceleration
what about the
lane
number
are
of
gonna happen.
homes or number of?
Yeah. The wild card in that, and I think that's why the ordinance designs you to have a final plat approval, is because, as you know, those additional impacts could cause, say you had no protests at this phase, now you're adding a decel lane and another thing. You need to have more public hearings and let people know, hey, you know, now we're even closer to your driveway over here, or what have you. So yeah, it could change quite a bit, and those could be better changes, or they could be worse, as far as impacts to adjacent property owners.
Couple quick questions just on the overall development. It talks about a community well.
Yes.
Again, if we, as a board, approve something like this, they can walk that back, can't they, and just let everybody put their own well in their own yard? Is that correct?
They could, yeah. Your ordinance allows for private property owners to have individual straws. As you know, from a groundwater management standpoint, that is not what we want to see. We'd rather see one straw in one place that's managed, that just manages the drawdown in that area better than multiple wells, only 200-300 feet apart. And that's, of course, been in the media recently with the new groundwater report showing east of 95 in Virginia generally we're losing groundwater quick.
One of the surveys, they called it Lot 17. That's that open space that's really it's not accessible. That's a deep, deep stream. There's no way. Is that then zoned residential as a lot, or does it become open space taxed, or do they abandon it? There's just no way that you can do anything with that land.
Yeah,
period.
this would all remain, it's A2, as you can see here. This would all remain A2.
It would, that little stub would end up being a.
Correct. And even the subdivisions are not allowed in A2 countryside, but A2 rural residential like this is available to have a major subdivision. So the underlying zoning would not change. So you would have an open well lot that would be zoned A2 essentially.
They talk about the houses in there. Are they gonna be building the houses, or are they selling lots for those houses?
They've indicated that they would be building the houses, but you do not have that as a proffer. You don't have that in writing. You don't have that as a guarantee.
So they can't put in mobile homes, or could they?
Well, now they can. The way that, and Max can tell you more about that, this new law that just took effect July 1st, we're not allowed to look at a manufactured home any different than a quote-unquote site-built home. So
we couldn't require that they put a foundation underneath that?
I think that's been a permanent foundation though, correct?
yeah, that's a good question.
I'd have to check specifically. There are differences between residential zoning districts and agricultural zoning districts. Both of those were loosened this past General Assembly session, so I'll check real quickly on what the agricultural requirements are.
In
Again,
agriculture now, in your A2 district now, single wides and double wides are permitted by right, so.
Again, they can tell us this, but what they actually do could be something completely different, and that's what, some concerns with that.
Yeah, unless you have it as some sort of condition or proffer, you really don't have a guarantee on that.
This question, Kyle or Wes might be better answer than you, Brian. The cul-de-sac, they showed a nice, pretty example of a fire truck, and if you read the fine print, the truck was 23 feet. Is that accurate for a fire truck, or a fire truck's longer? See, that's another issue. I don't know if that cul-de-sac's big enough back there, but they got a nice little box that says 23-foot fire truck, yeah, and that may be right, but, so.
If you look.
You look at the little square in there somewhere, it's gonna tell you 23 feet is that fire truck. So I don't think it's big enough for that cul-de-sac, so. And what's a fire truck, Kyle, Wes? 40 feet? Okay. Minimum, it's gonna have to be what, 75 feet minimum? So maybe 100 foot? So that's a flaw in that one right there.
Hopefully, that's the engineer did resubmit, and I've got it pulled, this active page I've got here. He's using a 47-foot fire truck here.
Okay. The one that I saw and what we were presented had a 23-footer, so,
Yeah, so this one you're showing on the screen is a
yeah,
47
that's
foot.
different than
47
what we
foot,
were
yeah,
saying.
to make that cul-de-sac.
That would need to be double-checked to be sure if that were the case. The stormwater detention pond that they have in there, is there a requirement that that has to be fenced for safety reasons? You got
There-
kids in the neighborhood, those kids are gonna be in that thing in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and that'll be in this area.
Oh, no, I was just going to clarify to your question, Supervisor Magruder, that it does not have to be on a permanent foundation in agricultural zoning districts.
Okay. So it could be anything. They can tell you $300,000, $350,000 home, and it could be, you know, a mobile home. We don't know that.
Yeah, your proposed
Unless they
stormwater area
proffer.
here, where the cursor is, there's no ordinance requirement to fence that. When you get into the stormwater management program, sometimes those are best management practices, but that might be something to consider for a
It's
condition.
not that box there. That's gonna be underground according to that little box above
Yeah.
it, right along the road. But they've got a retention pond down below. On one of the maps I saw, it had a retention
Okay,
pond in
yeah.
there. And, I was just wondering, you know, that would be something that, for safety reasons, for their part, I don't know if there's gonna be a homeowners association in this or not, but that is just trouble waiting to happen for somebody. And last question, you said there was one nay. I didn't read anywhere in the minutes the comment on what was their big concern, the one person who had concern about it.
It may help because you have the minutes before you, that was Chairman Jones.
Yeah, I know that.
So you can look at his comments and see.
Nothing was in there.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking, what was his reservation? 'Cause I did not see him-
Reservations, I'm not gonna speak for him, but he did indicate to me, that concerns about the road and
Okay.
the access and the, consistency with the subdivision ordinance wanting a good VDOT flow through where it does connect.
Okay, thank you.
There are just certain parcels that, are ideal for certain uses and others not so much, but, yeah, the stub out, I think, gave him concern.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, any other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you. I'll disconnect and get out of your way.
We
Sorry.
do have our financial advisors, Davenport here, so see him come in somewhere, hiding behind Brian. There he is. All right, Ted, you have the floor.
All right, good evening.
Even.
Sorry I was a little late, I hope that didn't cause problems on the agenda.
Everything is
We worked
good.
on through it.
Okay,
We're always happy to see you,
okay, well, that's,
at any time.
yeah, I'm assuming with the hard copies. I'm dating the last time I was here, but this is new for me in this space. It's really nice. Looks great.
You can thank that lady down there.
I've presented to the Essex Board before. My name's Ted Cole with Davenport, and we have served as financial advisor to the county, and by and large, most of the work that we've done is associated with capital projects and capital planning. We've got a presentation today. There's a lot more in this book than I'm going to go through. There's several things in the appendix, but this is informational. I don't think we're looking for any action from you all, just sharing some information, again, particularly about capital funding, and the potential use of debt in the future to fund capital projects. I'm happy to answer questions as we go. There are page numbers in the bottom right corner. So if you go to page 2, just a couple of things we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about credit ratings and introduce some peer comparisons that we're going to show you throughout the book. We're going to talk a little bit about your general fund operations and fund balance, and then we're going to get into a discussion about debt, and we're going to start with the existing debt that's in place today. That's the debt that's been issued, that you're servicing, just so you understand the baseline. And then we're going to get into looking at your debt profile as a county. How does it compare to those comparatives, policies, and we're going to talk about debt capacity and debt affordability. And I'll explain those in a little more detail as I go. So if you go to page 4, oh, perfect, somebody's got that, thank you. On the left-hand side, this is the rating scale for local governments, state and federal for that matter, from Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. Those are the 3 most commonly used rating agencies. Essex County is not rated. That's not because you're not creditworthy. You just never have needed to establish a bond rating. And maybe in the future that's something that we will need to do. It depends on, you know, what you might want to borrow. Do you want to issue debt, and how would you go about it? But nonetheless, there's a lot of good information the rating agencies provide that gives us some perspective on the county as a you know, a credit profile. On the right-hand side, we introduce some of the comparisons we're going to look at. We sourced Moody's, one of those rating agencies, for that information, and we look at counties. In the upper right, we're looking at counties, we call them credits, counties across the country that are rated AAA, which is the highest rating any local government can achieve. There's about 128 of them. The AA counties, 521, single A counties, about 77. And then a little more relevant perspective, Virginia counties that Moody's rates. They rate 13 different counties as AAA, 24 as AA, and 2 as single A. And you can see who they are. And again, while the county's not rated, our expectation would be based on your profile and things that we know, you know, you would be in that AA category. The question is, are you in that high, medium, or low AA? And it takes more work to sort of fine tune that. But just for perspective, likely in the AA category, were you to get rated. Okay? Page 5, the chart is really the main point here. We often talk about the rating agencies when we're issuing debt, but they look at a lot more than just the debt. So they look at your economy, they're looking at things like your tax base and tax base growth, they're looking at certain demographic information, primarily wealth and income levels, they're looking at economic output of the region. That's about 30% of the rating according to that chart, and you'll notice the check boxes, those are really things that you don't control in the short term, right? You just can't budget higher paying jobs or growth in the tax base. Those are really longer term plays or initiatives. Second component is finances. So how you budget, how you perform relative to your budget, your reserve levels, fund balance, 30% of the rating. And you all do have a little more control over those things as you're making financial decisions through the year. Institutional framework is 10% of the rating. That's a function of being a Virginia county. You get a very good score because they view Virginia local government as a good system, right? There's relatively high level of control that you all have over parts of your budget, right? So you're not as limited in setting your budget as counties might be in other states. So you get a good score there, not because you're Essex County, but because you're in Virginia. And then finally, the last piece, 30% of the rating is leverage. So that's your debt, the debt you've issued, that burden, plus things like your pension contributions for employees, post-employment benefits for retirees. So it's debt and debt-like items. So again, just perspective, debt is definitely a discussion for the rating agencies, but they look at a number of other things when they're assessing credit. All right, go to fund balance, page 7. This is very high level. The upper chart on the left, we're looking at 5 fiscal years, and we're sourcing the audits, fiscal year 21 through 25. In that upper left chart, the blue line, this is your general fund, by the way. The blue line is revenues coming into the county, right? All the different types of revenues that you all collect. The bars are the expenditures, or the money going out, and the bulk of which are your operating expenses in dark green, transferred to a debt service fund in the light green, and then transfers to capital in the gold. And what you're going to see over this 5 years is in every year, the revenues are higher than the operating expenses, and all but one, they're higher than the operating expenses and capital. So you've got a structurally balanced budget when we look at general fund revenues coming in versus your expenditures. And as a result, directly below it, you're going to see for those same 5 fiscal years how your general fund balance has evolved, and it's grown most every year. It was down just a tad in 24, but up again in 25, and over this time horizon, your fund balance has grown by about $3.5 million. Okay? So structurally balanced operationally in the general fund, and reserves that have generally been growing as you look over a 4 or 5 year period. Page 8, there's a lot on this slide, but let me just break it down. Upper left, you have a fund balance policy that's been adopted, and it looks at a specific component of your fund balance called the unassigned fund balance, which is the pot of money you have the most control over, the least amount of outside restrictions. And you're going to see us that we're graphing that as a percent of your budget. That's how the policy is written. We want our unassigned fund balance to be at least 15% of our budget, and ideally at 18% or higher. So the red line is the 15%, the blue dotted line is the 18%, and the dark green line is where you've actually performed. So higher's better here. You've been outperforming on your fund balance as a percent of your budget over this entire 5 year period. Again, that's consistent with the prior slide. That's a very good policy, and it's a policy that you're in compliance with and then some. And when you look at the upper right, this is where we do a comparison of you all to those rated counties nationally in the light green and within Virginia in the dark green. So you'll see Essex County is in gold. Your fund balance as a percent of your budget is about 26%. So you're above your policy. And you can see where the medians are for those various rating groups. Median's the midpoint of each group. So it's not the average, it's the median. And you can see what the medians are. You know, the nationals range anywhere from 26 to 36%. The Virginias range anywhere from 17 to 43%. But even with the Virginia AA medians, the second from the bottom in that chart, the median is 43%, but you see that blue line. Within that group, you've got somebody as low as 20%, and somebody as high as 87%. So it's a pretty wide range. You're at 26%, so you are maybe below the median, yes, but you are very much in the range of what those AA counties represent. And as we said, you're in compliance with your policy, and it's a good policy. It's not a policy that was set really low. It's a pretty solid policy. So 2 things there, obviously, the policy itself, compliance, and based on 25, so we don't have 26 audit yet, obviously. We want to see how 26 ended up with fund balance. And then you've got the 27 budget that you all just adopted. But as of FY25, you had some dollars in fund balance that were above your policy level. Okay? We're not looking to spend any of that in this analysis. We just wanted to give you a check-in on that policy. And we'll probably do it again when the 26 audit is available, you know, December, January timeframe, something like that. All right, so the rest of this book is about debt. And if you go to page 10, the total debt outstanding, and this has not all been issued at once, it was issued over a number of years. On the bottom left, there's about $7.8 million of debt outstanding. And that's made up of 4 or 5 different categories. School-related debt, debt that's been issued over the years for school purposes, is the majority of this, about $6.5 million. County debt is about $830,000. And you can see by the chart in the dark green, that last payment on that one is in 27, the year we're in now. The school debt goes out a little bit longer. Some debt associated with the airport, $278. some debt that you've been supporting for utilities, about 189, that's about to wrap up as well. So you can see all the pieces graphically, and on the table on the right, it's principal, interest, and total payments by fiscal year, starting in 2027, it's about 2.6 million, and then it's stepping down. You can see that step down in the graph or in the table, and that's going to create some opportunities for you all, because as your actual debt payments step down, if you can continue budgeting at the 2027 level, there's going to be some natural dollars that are freed up that can be used to help fund whatever is next on your list for capital. Now, that money could get rolled back to the operating budget as well. That'll be a budget decision, but part of our analysis and our approach here is that in 27, you are funding 2.6 million, and if you can continue to fund that level going forward and your payments are coming down, monies can be freed up to help afford the next thing on your list. Okay? That far right column says 10-year payout. That is a percentage-based ratio. Higher percentage is better. And what it's saying is 10 years from now, forward look, how much of this debt will be repaid? And for y'all, it's 100%. All of this debt will be repaid in 10 years. And it's a standard ratio that we would look at, or lenders would look at, the rating agencies would look at, just to see, are you amortizing your debt quickly, or is it really extended and backloaded? And you're certainly not extended nor backloaded. You're paying this debt off pretty rapidly. Okay? So we then go to page 11, and we have some debt-related policies, right? You have a fund balance policy that we cover. You got debt policies as well. And this one on 11 is looking at debt outstanding as a percent of your tax base. Your tax base is sitting at about 1.8 billion as a county, total taxable value. And the policy says in the red line, we don't want our debt outstanding to be above 3%. Lower is better. And you can see the green line year over year as you've been paying off debt, and as you've had some growth in your tax base, the debt as a percent of your tax base has come down every year. And in 2025, we landed at about 0.5%, 0.5%. Your policy says we don't want to go above 3%, lower is better, so you're well below that policy. And again, you're on the right side of your policy. And so when we look at this policy and this calculation in a vacuum, just on page 11, we'd say, look, Essex County has debt capacity, meaning it's a reasonable conversation that you might be having or will have, that you might consider issuing debt in the future to fund capital projects. If the capital projects are of a dollar amount that's beyond what you can pay with cash, issuing debt may be a viable option, and we would not look at the county as an over-leveraged county, right? You do have debt outstanding. It's a relatively small amount. You're well in compliance with this policy, and in the upper right, the comparison to those other communities, lower is better, and particularly compared to the Virginia peers, you're well below that. So you are, again, not over-leveraged. Your debt profile is strong, if you will, and that would lead us to the conclusion that a discussion about possibly issuing debt in the future is certainly reasonable. There's capacity. Doesn't mean there's affordability, right? Those are two different concepts. We have capacity on paper where we could issue debt and still demonstrate we have a solid debt profile, but we also need to understand, do we have the affordability? How does it impact our budget? Okay? One more debt policy on page 12. What we're measuring here is the annual debt payment as a percent of your budget. And remember, your annual payment this year for debt is about $2.6 million when you push it all together. And when you look at your policy, the red line in the upper left, it says 12%. That is an upper limit. We don't want to be above 12%. On a budgetary basis, we want our debt service for that year to be at or below 12%. You've got a twofold policy, below 12%, ideally below 10%. And the yellow line shows you over the last 5 years, that percentage has been coming down, lower is better. You've landed at about 6.8%. So like the prior slide, well below your policy. And on a comparison basis in the upper right, you're really right on top of the Virginia AAA median. You're lower than the Virginia AA median, and again, lower is better. So both of those graphs or charts tell us, one, you've got good debt policies that you're in compliance with, continue to be in compliance with. Two, you're not an over-leveraged county when we look at your the comparison to those other rated communities, and capacity exists, not unlimited capacity, but it's a reasonable conversation that you all might evolve to where you're looking at your capital needs, again, that might be beyond what you can accomplish with just cash, and debt would be a viable tool.
And Ted, for our new board members that are here, we some years ago changed these policy thresholds. I believe at one time, this debt service to expenditures was 15%. We dropped it down to 12%. And we did that to put us in a better debt position. We were still within our policies before, but we made it that we could ensure that we'd stay there. So we have control over those policies and those limits. And we were good with the policies that we had at the 15, and I think we were at 12 on the other one for maximum. So we changed those probably 3-4 years ago, maybe, might have been even 5.
Made them more stricter, more restrictive. And you're absolutely right, those are your policies, these are not laws, these are not statute, they're driven by this board and other boards, subsequent boards, and you have the ability to amend those, look at those every year. If you had a big project that you really felt was important for the community that might put you out of compliance with a policy, you can make that exception. You're not influenced by outside entities.
Our policy allows that for the rest of the board members, but I think it's a short term that we have to get it back under within a year or two or something. It's pretty quick.
That's right.
Or adjust our policies
Or
if we
just
need
the
to.
policy, yeah, so be
That's
careful of that.
Right,
But we
yeah,
did
so
that
if
for
there
that
were a,
reason.
For that reason, exactly.
yeah, if there were a
Gives you some
significant
flexibility.
project that was really important to you all and the community, and you needed to issue debt, and that debt might put you out of compliance for a few years, your policy allows that as long as you all or the board at that time were to make an exception. So capacity exists. 13 is where we discuss affordability, and I would suggest we start on the left-hand side where we show fiscal years. Column B as in boy is the annual payments due every year. We know that. That's on the existing debt only, and we know it to the penny. Column C and D are placeholders for new debt that might be discussed in the future. Again, not suggesting you will issue debt, but just discussing that it could be a possibility depending on your capital needs. So column E is just restating column B. That's the payments you have to make. We know that. Column F, G, and H are a breakout of where does the money come from every year to make those payments. And it's really made up of 3 sources of funding that this all ties back to the budget. The majority of which is in column F, which is an annual transfer to the debt service fund. That's current year revenues coming in from, in any given year, tax receipts, sales tax, whatever the case may be, of about $2.2 million. And you'll notice that we've held that flat every year going forward. That goes back to that conversation that as your actual payments drop, if you can continue to appropriate the same amount each year, you're gonna have some dollars available for new projects. So the lion's share of how you pay your debt every year is column F, current year appropriation from revenues. Column G is, it's an acronym, Qualified School Construction Bond Subsidy. That's a type of debt that was done years ago, not just by Essex, but a lot of local governments, where you get a subsidy from the federal government equal to or very close to the interest paid on the bonds. It was a stimulus era bond program to encourage localities to look at investing in facilities for particularly schools. And that's only gonna go for a few more years because that subsidy stops when the debt that it's subsidizing ends. So that's why it stops. It will end. And then the last H, column H, is a refunding that we did on some debt years ago through one of the state programs called the Virginia Public School Authority. That's also going to end when the debt ends. So really, the ongoing and revenue source that's going to go into the future is column F. Those other two, although they're very real dollars every year, they're going to tail off when the debt that they're associated with ends. So when you look at column E, that's money going out the door every year. And column J, which is money coming in, you can see in fiscal year 27, they're perfectly matched. That's why in column K, it's 0. Money out, money in, equal. The next year, there's $523,000 to the good, primarily because your actual payments are stepping down. So in fiscal 28, if you can budget according to F, G, and H, there would be about $523,000 of revenue above what the actual payments are. And that's what can help you fund future capital, whether you spend that on cash funding a project or you use that maybe to make a debt payment if you were to issue debt. The next year, it's $745,000, $548,000, so you can see there's some pretty significant dollars that will materialize as you go forward. And right now, we're just accumulating those in column L, as in Larry. What we're about to do is fill in column C with some new debt, potential new debt. Make it clear, nobody's approved any debt. Tonight's not about approving debt, just hypothetical. So you're in a really good place here because current revenues are covering current debt service, and in going forward, there's at least an opportunity to take advantage of those declines. So that takes us to page 15, which is FY27, it's the fiscal year we're now in, capital projects that are either been approved or under consideration. And we've broken it into a few different funds. Column A just describes the project. B is where the funds are expected to come from. So you'll notice there's several projects that are expected to be funded out of reserves in what's called Fund 301, about $906,000 worth of projects. And I'm sure if there's questions on any of those, we can talk through them, but take them at face value for the time being. $906,000 out of Fund 301. Column C is Fund 150, which is referred to as VATI Grant Fund. There's $7.3 million of projects out of there, and then other projects, $1.6 million. There's just one, which is line item 4, school energy improvements. I think a series of potential improvements at school facilities that would result in energy savings, be it electric, primarily, I think, probably electric, heating, cooling type savings.
And board members, B and C is what we've approved through our capital improvement plans that we have. So those are approved funds for 2027.
That's right.
Column,
And as you,
column D are those ones that haven't either come to us for appropriations or we haven't approved.
yeah, and you go down under column B, you get to that sources of fund. Well, where's the 906 coming from for those projects? 166,000. I'm under column B towards the bottom. 166,000 coming from reserves that have accumulated in Fund 301, and about 740,000 appropriated from fund balance. With the VATI grant fund, there's about 5.66 million of grant funds and $1.7 million out of Fund 150 accumulated reserves. And then lastly, as a base case for the school energy, the $1.6 million, we've assumed for the time being that that could be debt funded. It's eligible for debt funding if you want to do it that way. Obviously, you could spend cash or you could do some combo, cash and debt. For the starting point of this discussion, we've assumed that that would be debt funded. But again, nobody's Nobody's made that decision. That's not,
And there is a portion of that fund of what we had with the school construction grant fund that we allocated toward the chiller work as part of that. So this number would be less based on those funds that we'd already appropriated out of the school construction fund. So it'd be less than this number. The exact amount I couldn't tell you, but.
and we know this is just FY '27, right? So we know there's likely to be projects in '28, '29, '30, right? You never sort of get to the end of your CIP. And what we're gonna do on the next few pages, if you flip to 16, is we're gonna show you a repayment plan that starts with just the $1.6 million of school energy, and then we're gonna show you hypothetically how much more you could borrow over the next roughly 5 years within the revenues you're already budgeting. In other words, not having to find new revenue, but remember those declines and those surpluses, we're gonna show you how much debt those surpluses could support if you chose to issue debt in the future. And we're gonna look at the debt repayment over 15 or 20 years, depending on, what you're funding and what your preferences might be for a debt repayment. And really, everything comes to a head on page 17. Let me walk you down scenario 1. This is where whatever debt we're issuing is paid back in 15 years. We're using a 5% interest rate. You're going to be closer to 4% today, so there's some cushion there. And off the bat, we're funding line 8, which is the $1,683,000 for school energy, right? That is embedded in that scenario. We look at your policies in the middle, and they all remain intact. You don't go through any policies. And then at the very bottom, what's called additional affordability by fiscal year is we are showing you on top of the $1.6 million, how much more debt could you issue with a 15-year payback over the next roughly 6 years. And it's about $21.5 million. Now, you can't do that all at once. It's over time that becomes viable, or affordable, I should say. So the $1.6 million plus a hypothetical additional debt of $21.5 million takes you to line 27. Over that 6 years, the way your debt is tailing off and those reserve or those surpluses that are accumulating, it could help support a little over $23 million of debt. Again, not all at once. It would happen over a number of years, but that gives you some perspective as you start thinking about what the other projects might be in 28, 29, 30, right? And we're not saying it's for schools or county or anything like that. It's just generically the amount of debt you could issue. And under scenario 2, it's the exact same setup, but the debt is 20 years. And you'll notice that because the payment's a little lower on line 27 with 20-year debt, you could squeeze out about another $4 million or $27 million over that same period of time. So the capacity is there, right, within your policies, and with those comparisons to other rated communities, you're not over leveraged. Having a conversation that might lead you to discussing issuing debt in the future is reasonable. And within the way you've budgeted, you've got somewhere in the range of 23 to 27 million of debt affordability over the next roughly 6 years. Again, whether that's for school projects, county projects, or some combination of those. And so we felt like that was a good way to look at it, not knowing at this point exactly what those outer years might mean for projects, but to at least frame the discussion so as you start talking about 28, 29, 30 capital projects, you've got a sense of what you can afford. You could do more than we've shown, but if you do more, you've got to find some new annual revenues to pull into the model. This is being done without going out finding new revenue. All it's assuming is you can keep appropriating the $2.22 million each year.
And so, these scenarios, board members, would allow us to not impact the taxpayers for any additional revenues or raise taxes for, again, over the 6 years, up to either $21, $26 million.
That's right. That's really like the key takeaway of the discussion. There's one more slide before the appendix is page 18, and when and if the time comes where you might want to issue debt, you'll have lots of options. And you've used all of these options before, most all of them. Direct bank loan, you go out and solicit proposals from banks and you borrow with a bank. You go through one of the state programs, whether it's the VRA program called the Virginia Resources Authority. They're a pool funding program that the state manages for basically any project except schools. And then there's another state program called the Virginia Public School Authority, which is a pool bond program specifically for schools. So there's two state pools, one for schools and one for basically everything else. County facilities, water, sewer, solid waste, what have you. And then there's a couple of other options which may or may not be needed, but a public issuance of bonds in the bond market or participation in, for example, a federal program like USDA. So a number of funding options that will be available to you when and if the time comes, depending on the project. A pretty decent amount of affordability of the next 6 years in terms of the amount of money that your budget will support for new debt service, and a debt profile that is pretty modest, and taking on additional debt would be viewed by most anybody that's looking at it as reasonable, because you're not over leveraged. I think that was the meat of what we wanted to discuss. I know it's a lot of info. We're purposely not looking for action. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any, and I suspect we might evolve from here if you get better idea of what those outer year projects might potentially be, timing, amounts, et cetera.
I think it's important to note for the public and those watching that, I mean, it's really good news that we have the ability that we can incur debt for projects, but that's specifically what it's for. These aren't funds for operational type issues. These are capital infrastructure projects only.
Yeah.
And not to cover operations.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. There's nothing in this book about your operating budget, right? And the stresses that might be going on with operating expenses. All it is the debt payments and where the money comes from every year, that $2.2 million primarily. Didn't want to muddy the waters with an operating analysis at the same time.
Yep. Ted, I have one question, and is there any advantage to us paying off the debt that we have? I think it's maybe 1.8 million, 1.6 million for everything except for the schools. Is there any advantage to us paying that off now as opposed to letting it run its course?
Yeah, the debt that's associated with the water sewer component, your last payment is in the year we're now in, 27. So that's contributing to that decline in 28. That'll be gone. It may or may not be prepayable. That's the other question
Well, that's what I
about
was going to ask.
debt.
I know some can't be prepaid
That's right.
without some kind of penalty or.
The county debt, which is in the VRA program, the last payment on that is in 27, so the year we're in. That's $850,000 a year. That's a pretty big payment. That's going to be gone in 28. That was a 2020. That's not prepayable. It's at a good interest rate, but it's not prepayable. And then you've got some subsidized loans for schools through one of the VPSA subsidy program or that qualified school construction bonds. I don't think there's much low-hanging fruit. Most of the debt you have on the books today is at rates that they're either not prepayable or they're at rates that are lower than if you were going to borrow today. And many of them are paid off, or a handful of them are paid off in the next couple of years. So that's not to say none of these might make some sense. It would be the use of cash to pay off a debt early. The only thing I would say is, if we want to seriously explore that, it'd probably be nice to see the 26 audit. Where did we finish up on reserves? Do we feel comfortable that there's reserves there that we could use to pay off debt early? Or are those reserves maybe better used to fund a new project or avoid future debt? But certainly something we can look at more closely. But it's not every loan that will be able to be paid off.
Board members, any additional questions?
That's why I like Ted coming. But I will comment, and I've said this before, and it's just worth repeating. 10 years ago, when I got elected here, we had $36 million in debt and $12 million of interest. And it was through good budgeting, refinancing, cutting expenses, finding efficiencies, getting grants. The county employees, I'm going to give them a lot of credit for getting us down to where we have this flexibility. I don't want people to assume that this unassigned fund balance is so high, 26, we can go on a spending spree. We planned this amount of money to be here so that we can do these capital improvement projects. It's not to just say, hey, we can increase operating expenses here, there, and yonder. I mean, this was specifically done for these capital improvement projects. So, and between our debt reduction, we're able to meet these capital expenses, not operational.
And it's what's allowed us to reduce the tax rates
Also.
down for the last,
I think we are the
9 years.
lowest in the area now, so. I think King Queen went up and they were the lowest, so they've gone above us. So we have a lot to be proud of in this county, so. And County Administrator, please pass that on to your employees. They've done a wonderful job and I thank them.
Ronnie?
Ted, thank you again for the presentation, very thorough, financial analysis. Are you, if we went out and borrowed money, I know the economy is a little bit uncertain right now with interest rates and so forth. Would you recommend, I mean, I know direct bank loans will vary, but would it be better to go for a fixed rate or a lower variable rate that could be repriced later?
Yeah, right. We are seeing a lot of volatility in interest rates, and that's being driven by financial trends and global, events, Iran, on again, off again, what the Fed isn't or isn't doing. 20-year debt right now through one of those state programs is going to be about a 4% interest rate, fixed for 20 years.
No, you can't beat that.
And a bank, maybe it's a little bit higher, 4.5. Even short-term debt is in the 4s or the high 3s. So it's what we call kind of a very flat yield curve.
Or maybe inverse.
Or sometimes it's inverse. If the Fed starts raising rates, your borrowing rates between year 1 and year 20 aren't that different right now. Now, year from now, they could be lower, they could be higher. I think when we start seriously talking about a borrowing, we certainly will want to look at that in a more refined way, but at 4% for 20 years, we're not at the absolute lows, but we're still well below the highs.
And so, when are you seeing most of this debt being not able to be prepaid early or refinanced?
The state programs that I've mentioned are pretty much standard, 10 years, no prepayment. Banks will be all over the map.
Right.
Some banks will let you prepay the day after you close the loan. Others will say 3 years or 5 years. So banks tend to be specific to each bank, what the no prepayment term is. The state programs, VRA, VPSA, are standard 10 years, no prepayment, and then you have the ability to prepay without penalty.
So even in an uncertain environment in the economy, the interest rates for a locality like us would be are not that bad.
No, they're not that bad, and they're tax exempt, right? So you get that
Yeah, good
that
point.
that benefit as a local government. I don't know, a 30-year mortgage is 6.5
That's
or
right.
6 3/4, something like that. Your 30-year borrowing rate might be 4.5.
Right.
20 years, 4%. So you get the benefit of tax exempt rates along the way.
Ted, I recall that the county at one time issued bonds, I think, through our EDA. Is that a possibility as well?
That's another option, and it fits in our analysis as well, meaning the hypotheticals we've run would cover that kind of debt. And that often is because you've got a project that either doesn't fit into one of those state programs, or the state programs are very rigid on when they issue debt, and you might really need or want to borrow when those programs aren't ready. And borrowing through the EDA is a pretty common practice. You've done it, many counties do it, so that would be another option that we would look at compared to banks and the state programs.
So it could be added to that analysis on
Correct.
who to go to. Perfect. Thank you.
Board members, any other questions? Appreciate Ted. We'll look
Okay.
forward to seeing you
Thank
back
you.
at the
Appreciate it.
beginning of the year.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
as we develop more things, we'll be in touch. I'm sure we'll have more conference calls, so
Great.
we've had a few. All right, board members, we're not gonna have time to cover all of these things. There's just not enough time. We will start promptly at 7 for our regular meeting, because we have public hearings of people that have showed up for that. So we'll need to add these into our regular meeting, if we can do that. Are we able to do that, Matt?
Yep.
The question is, which pieces? I've got a feeling that the school updates, the financials, are gonna take the longest period of time, and I think it's probably gonna take more than 30 minutes to cover. I think it'll take more than 30 minutes to, would be my guess. I'd probably recommend seeing if we can get through, and I think the EDA, I think that's gonna have more input. I think we're just gonna need to put the schools and the EDA into the regular meeting, and I would ask that we would insert that after our public hearing and public comments. So it's not waiting till the end, but we just get through our public hearing for all those people that are here to speak on behalf of these public hearings that we have, and get the public comments out of the way. That way anybody that wants to leave can, and then we'll jump right on those. And I don't think those will take, then we can get back to those work session items. Is the board comfortable with that?
What are you saying, to take up the museum and the Rise and Fall sponsorship?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I think we can get those knocked out pretty quick. So with that, let's, yeah. Right, we could, yeah. Well, that's what we're talking, yeah. Yeah, that's where, that's what I was talking about doing anyway, agency reports, right after public comment.
Just making sure that we change it or
Yeah.
new business.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and have,
Tim Manley with the
yeah,
Essex.
Tim Manley from
Museum,
the
3.05.
I was trying to find over there, I'm looking at too many lines on this schedule. And I apologize for the other groups, there's just too much packed into this work session to get through it all, so.
All right, good evening.
Even,
Thank you all for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Essex County Museum and Historical Society. My name is Tim Manley, I'm the executive director. I do want to recognize our board member, Bud Smith, will be speaking to you momentarily. But first, I want to thank the board for graciously approving the increase in our appropriation account from $11,000 to $15,000. We truly appreciate that support. I am here tonight because the other two accounts in our requests, which were maintained at the same levels as last year, were zeroed out. We understand that the board has difficult budget decisions to make, and I want to be very specific about what that funding would actually pay for. The $9,500 building museum account is used for the basic costs of maintaining and operating our 1941 museum building, as well as the Max Silver Memorial Courtyard. That includes building repairs and maintenance, housekeeping, utilities, insurance, and the ongoing upkeep of the courtyard. The courtyard has become an important community space. It hosts school groups, community events, holiday gatherings, and our growing calendar of public programs, including the Rise and Fall Festival next month. Keeping it safe, maintained, and available to the public requires ongoing expense. This is not discretionary spending. These are costs of keeping a public historic building open and functioning. Now, the capital improvements funding is used for equipment replacement and necessary improvements to the facility. This year, one of our most important projects is converting the former curator's storage area into a new community and media room. That will give us a dedicated space for educational programs, community meetings, presentations, and media events. And we have already identified significant needs associated with that project. 4 of the windows in the community room and one of our bathroom windows show substantial deterioration, and delaying the replacement will only cause additional damage to the building. Our initial plan was to replace them with similar windows, but that has proven to be more of an expense than we could bear. The initial estimate on that was $2,500 per window. Thanks to the work of some of our board members, we are moving forward with a replacement plan that has an initial cost of around $3,500, and that's for all the windows. Those are the kinds of expenses the capital improvements account is intended to address. So when we ask the county to restore this funding, we are not only asking for money simply to increase our programming budget or create new discretionary spending. We're asking for the resources necessary to maintain the building, maintain the courtyard, address deteriorating infrastructure, replace equipment when necessary, and make responsible improvements that allow the museum to serve the public. And this comes at a time when the museum is doing more, not less. This year, we celebrated the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution with a traveling exhibition from the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. Hopefully, some of y'all got to go and see that. Very well done. We're also recognizing the 350th anniversary of Bacon's Rebellion. We hosted River Fest activities in the courtyard. And last month, working with the SAR, the county graciously allowed us the use of this very facility for the annual reading of the Essex resolutions, in the very building where those important words were put to paper. We will be hosting TAG's plein air event in the courtyard. And we are launching the inaugural Rise and Fall Festival in September, which will bring music, history, and visitors to Essex County. We're also moving forward with new museum plaques and signage. These aren't simply expenses, they are investments in the museum's ability to serve the people of Essex County. Our special events budget is increasing substantially this year, but $20,000 of that increase is being supported by a National Park Service grant for the Rise and Fall Festival, which we were able to successfully apply for thanks in large part to assistance from the county, specifically April Rounds, Carlos Disla, and Brian Seal. We're actively seeking grants, sponsorships, donations, and other outside funding to bring additional resources into the county, but that revenue only goes so far. A significant portion of it is restricted to particular programs or projects, while the basic costs of keeping the museum building open and functioning continue regardless of what programming we are offering. That is why stable county support matters. The $15,000 that was eliminated is not money that would sit in an account waiting to be spent. It would be used throughout the year for very specific necessary expenses, maintaining our historic building, maintaining the courtyard, addressing repairs, and making needed capital improvements. Without it, we will have to divert money from programming, preservation, and other activities to cover basic facility needs or defer maintenance and improvements that should not be deferred. We're asking the board to restore the $15,000 that was included in our original $30,000 request so that we can maintain the museum responsibly while continuing to grow the programs and services that we provide to the people of Essex County. Thank you for your consideration and your continued support of the Essex County Museum.
Board members, any questions or comments?
The request is 15,000?
Yes, sir.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I would, I sit on the board, I'd like to make that disclosure, I sit on the board of the Essex County Museum and Historical Society. When we were doing that budgeting back in the spring, we were trying to separate out the operating versus the capital improvements. And at that time, we did not have the detailed information that you presented here in your letter and your presentation tonight. So, again, I don't think it was the intention of this board to cut the museum by 42%, which is what the $15,000 represents. It was try to get more clarity on what the museum was doing. The last year's appropriation was 26,000. This year's request was 30. So to Mr. Supervisor Magruder's point, the request is to restore the 15,000 over and above the initial 15,000 to equal the $30,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
Joe, anything? So, yeah, I know that originally, we had some big capital items that we funded, which is, we hadn't really slashed the budget, but there was capital expenses that we had in years past that we were helping cover for the museum. And I get that there's other capital needs now. What I'm not sure of is what's capital and what's not out of that additional funding, because you say something like housekeeping. Housekeeping wouldn't be capital expenditure, that's an operational cost. And unfortunately, the time that we're at right now is our budget has been complete, so anything that we pull out that funds additionally would have to come out of reserves. And I, for one, am not keen on using reserves to pay for operational expenses. So what I would like to see, I guess, as a request is a breakout of the funding that's needed for capital, exclusive capital items, because, you know, in my mind, that's treated differently, capital is versus operations. We shouldn't tap into our reserves to pay for any operational costs, you know, if we don't have to, so I'd like to see that.
Yes, sir, I can provide that for you, no problem.
And the town participation for your budget was how much this year?
Yes, sir, 11,000, they went up 4,000 from last year.
Okay, so they were at 7 and went to 11.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In additional to $1,000 sponsorship for the festival as well, which they just approved.
Tim, do you have the capital, I know you've got, the budget is all in QuickBooks and everything. Do you have, and you may not have in front of you, it may not be fair to ask, but do you have that amount for capital off the
Not
top of
in
your
front of me.
Okay.
I just got a question. You said your total budget, you requested 30 from the county, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
So that don't include the 11 that you got from the town?
Does not. Correct.
And that's always been the case.
I just had to, I want to make sure.
It was two separate funding
Because
sources.
11 and 15 is 26 to me. I was just trying to make sure.
Thanks, Tim. If the board doesn't have any other questions, thank you. All
Okay, thank y'all.
right, Bud, you're up.
Good evening.
Peter.
You have before you a copy of the Rise and Fall Festival agenda or program that's going to be done. It's a 3-day event. We have received funding from grants. We've received funding from individuals, and this has nothing to do with the budget. That's all Tim's problem. I'm just out raising money to help support it because everything on the festival is going to be free except the concerts in the evenings. So far, I have raised about $3,000. Like Tim said, I got squeezed 1,000 out of the town council last night, and very appreciative of it. If you saw the paper today, we got 1,500 from the Tappahannock Warsaw Moose, and then I've got some individuals, Riverland Insurers, Tappahannock Chevrolet. I'm waiting on, I hope, a healthy chunk from Breezeline. Been in touch with them, and I've contacted the banks. So hopefully there's gonna be some more money coming in. There, along with the schedule of the events, I sent you a schedule of the sponsorships. I'm not asking for anything in particular, just want you to dig down into your shallow pockets and give me a big chunk of it. Because it's all going to the museum, it's all going for the county, and And I don't know of anything that we could do right now that would be a bigger benefit to the kids and the public. Because it is a free 3-day event except for the concerts.
But what is the targeted goal, sponsorship goals? Is there a target
As
goal?
much money as I could raise. I don't know what the grants were. We got some from Dominion. We got one from the government, some government, well, National Park Service.
Yes, for that.
And I wasn't involved in those. I was
I'd
just
be-
involved in the sponsorship.
I guess my question, and this could go back to Tim, he might be able to provide this, is what's our overall budget for the event? And then what are we trying to raise, or have we raised for it, and how far off are we? And then what happens to those excess monies? Because if you raise more than the event would cost, I would think you'd open up the concerts too and make it free.
I don't know exactly, maybe Tim could help with that. I was just given a sponsorship page and said, go see if you can raise us some money. If we don't, we have enough money to do the basics. Tim needs more money to expand the basics so that everything is free to the public. And I have no idea what the grants have been, just what I've collected,
And you said the town contributed how much?
$1,000.
1,000.
Board members, any other questions for Bud? Thank you, Bud, appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
April, do you have something?
I looked up the grant. It was $19,238 in cash with just the in-kind support from the counties, Mr. Manley
Thank you.
offered to you.
At this point, we're going to take, we're going to go ahead and close our work session out. We'll take a 9-minute break and get started promptly at 7 o'clock. So the work session is adjourned.